morning everyone, welcome in this class. As we are discussing our chapter number 7, that is understanding marginalization. In our previous class, we already discussed about what is marginalization. In simple word, marginalization means to isolate, out of focus. We also discussed about Adivasis, how they were displaced from their own land on the name of development, what problems they faced after displacement, how they were treated by the mainstream people. So all these we discussed in our last class. Today we will continue this chapter and we'll discuss our next subtopics like Adivasis and development and minorities and marginalization. So let's start our class. Adivasis and development. Now, what happened with the process of development? In the process of development, the forests were cleared. We had mining projects came up. We had dam construction started, and also this led away the original land from the tribal. So what happened was, now these tribals started to become marginalized. They were forced to move away from their original piece of land, and therefore they were asked to move to the cities. When they moved to the cities, they were engaged in low-wage jobs, and as a result, they became marginalized further. And initially, they were the one who were familiar with the major animals products, the major medicinal plants, and were really important in the past society. But as the trend changed and things changed, we had the land that became occupied for mining, wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, and these tribals who are forced out to move from those areas. So all these activities led them for the marginalization of the tribe. And we have, for example, Nyamgiri Hill. It is located in Kalahandi in Orissa. Now this is inhabited by the Konds tribe. However, there was proposition for the aluminum plant to be set up. Many of the environmentalists walked around against it, but still it was in flow. So what happened with this kind of project is the tribe further get marginalized. As in the story, in our storyboard of our book, where Dadu told to his grandchildren that we were the king of the forest and we were really rich. With the modern invention coming in, there were tractors rolled across the forest, and we had to sell our land at very low cost to the contractors, and we even forced to move on to the cities with very low wages and a kind of marginalized and low wage job. We were threatened and beaten. So those were kinds of stories that the original tribals used to tell to their children and grandchildren. So this is how the things has changed for the tribals over the time. The land has been acquired in northeast. We have land that is been marginalized, that is being used for the military purpose. So those are some of the areas. So when what happened is, ultimately they trapped into the cycle of poverty and discrimination, as we talked about, and malnutrition and low literacy are again the killer for them. So all those are the things that government need to look forwards for. The government has given a category of scheduled tribe where the government has officially declared these groups as tribal groups which are recognized by the government of India, and there are certain protections that have been given to them. They have been given certain advantages and government jobs for promotions and so on. So various kinds of reservations that could be seen, but more or less they have been displaced from their land. As a result, they have lost their income, they have lost their traditions and lost their customs. So this way the idea for the Adivasis or the tribal groups. Now, coming on to the minorities. Minority, we can say suppose there are 30 students in your class, and there are 2 students from a separate community. So, these 2 students become the minority student. That is the simplest way to explain it. So, community which is numerically less in relation to the remaining population is declared as the minority population. Now, sometimes this size itself can be known as marginalization. So, Muslims for 2011 census, if we talk about, account for nearly 14% of the total population, and their size is really less than the total size or the total population. Now, citizens have been given the right to approach the court if they feel that any of their fundamental right is violated. So, Constitution safeguards those rights. We have talked about the population of Muslims, population group for Muslims. Now, they are considered as the marginalized because they have less access to the basic amenities. There was a Rajendra Sachar committee that was established, and this committee is really important because it explains the socio-economic and political or educational status of Muslims in India, and it talked about the high drop rates and low school enrollment rates among the Muslim students. It also talked about, like other minorities, Muslims' customs and practices are something quite different from what is seen as the mainstream. Some not all Muslims may wear burqa, sports a long beard, wear a face, and this become ways to identify all Muslims. Because of this, they tend to be identified differently, and some people think they are not like the rest of us. Often this becomes an excuse to treat them unfairly and discriminate against them. In class 7, we had seen that how Ansaris were finding it difficult to rent a house. So later on, there has seen ghettoization has occurred, and ghettoization means that religion is populated by a specific community. So there is a feeling of security that generate among the people there, and they feel that they are safe to live in this region itself. However, as a result, they become marginalized or they are moved to the differences because of the process of ghettoization, as we call this process as the social marginalization that occur. Now, these various prejudices and stereotypes that exist has led to prejudices and hatredness, which is against one of the major issues that we need to address in today's society. So, what we require is various strategies, measures, and safeguards to address the issue of marginalization. Both of these groups that we have discussed and other groups that we know about have long history of struggle and resistance. They have shown differently resistance to change, which is one of the major reason, and again there is this marginalization that kicks them or that force them to create their own distinct culture and don't lose their tradition and customs with the mainstream, but government and the constitution really want this to safeguards their rights, to protect them and to have a way forward for them, so that they can be well adopted and well mixed up with the mainstream. This is all about chapter number 7. In next class, we will talk about how different groups have concentrated the issue of marginalization.